This is the Plagmanrules Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome. It's Monday, October 16th, and we've got a few topics to talk about today. We got, of course, the weekend box office. We'll go over some of the big highlights there. We're also going to take a look at the first trailer for the new Mutants. We'll talk about that a little bit. I'm not a big guy on the X-Men or on the history of the X-Men, so I can't really speak to an authoritative sense on that, just kind of talk about things that were good or questionable about it. And I did see, this is kind of a first time for me, I did see a early preview for Only the Brave, a movie that's coming out this Friday, so I'll talk about that a little bit. Okay, at the weekend box office, we got the estimates here. Happy Death Day came in first place. This, to me, was not really too much of a surprise. $26.5 million. That's actually an outstanding number, I think, for this movie. Number one, when we consider that it was going up against Blade Runner 2049, which I know a lot of people, I don't want to come off the wrong way here, but I think a lot of people were almost too bullish on the idea that Blade Runner 2049 was only going to drop like 20 or 25%. It just wasn't going to happen. I mean, we just don't live in an era of audiences going back to the theater that often or word of mouth being that good, not unless it's around a major holiday. It's a big success for Universal and Blumhouse, who have another big winner here. $4.8 million budget, and it's already, at $26.5 million here domestically. And this one, I think they're going to roll out kind of slowly overseas. I don't think it opened in too many foreign markets, so its grand total worldwide is only at about $31.5 million at this rate. But still, it's going to be a very good sizable hit for them. I don't know if it's going to reach the levels of Get Out from earlier this year, but definitely a $26.5 million start is a great one, and I definitely think this is going to be alongside it, and then when we get the new Saw movie the last weekend of October, they're going to be the three kind of big horror movies that stand out from this fall season. And we'll see, I mean, we've got like 5 or 6 new movies entering the fray this upcoming weekend, so we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting one for sure to see what's going to top the box office. Probably the new Medea movie, but you never know. Maybe Happy Death Day does hold around a little bit, but I think we should never underestimate Tyler Perry's power at the box office, so we'll get to that, I'm sure, later. Okay, so speaking of Blade Runner, so $15.1 million is its total here the second weekend. That's down just shy of 54% for now after 2 weeks, or at least 2 weekends, a domestic total of a little over $60.5 million. And we look at the worldwide charts, it's now up to $158.5 million. And remember that the production budget on this reportedly is about $150. I've heard $175. So it has not even met its production budget by some estimates. Of course, if you're saying $150, then yeah, it's past it. But you have to remember, it also had a lot of marketing. It had all sorts of different costs and stuff, back-end deals. So again, the number I was hearing was close to $500 million, give or take a few 20 or 25 million there, to break even and get everything past the production costs and the marketing costs. And it's looking like it's not going to break anywhere close to that. I mean, probably 300 million is tops. I mean, unless I've heard the Asian markets have not really played it yet. So we'll see how if they really explode and it turns into one of the bigger overseas successes in those territories, then okay, we're talking maybe 400 million, but still, that's not going to come up to that $500 million mark. Again, that's just an estimate I've heard from a couple sources. I've also heard 425, I've also heard 450, I've also even heard as low as 300 million. I don't know. So it's like, no, I don't think there's any one source we can look to directly and say, yes, that's the number it has to hit, with the exception of we know for sure what the production budget is, but we never really hear what the total costs are after marketing and after back-end deals and so on and so forth. And also after the, roughly 30 to 40% of what the theater takes back from all the ticket sales. It's not looking good for this movie. Okay, we also had a few other new releases out. The Foreigner was one of them. $12.8 million in third place. Now, I just didn't think this one was going to hit with audiences. I didn't really see a lot of marketing. Jackie Chan and Pierce Brosnan are the big stars here. And even among them, I mean, Jackie Chan is still, globally, I think, a very recognizable name. I don't think he has the box office draw that he had. If you go back, even as far as 10 or 15 years ago, this guy, could open a movie and it would be 200 million worldwide, no problem. But it's just not really the age that we're living in anymore. So even by my estimates, I think I had it as low as, I think, 8 million or something for what it was going to open. But still, to do 12.8 million, I think that's a better result than they were thinking. For sure, they were thinking like 9 million, I think was the number I saw. So to see a number as high as 12.8, that's a pretty good start for this movie. All right, then we have a couple of kind of smaller release movies to talk about here. First of all, Marshall. This is, of course, the Thurgood Marshall kind of biopic movie. Opened in about 821 theaters for about 3 million, a little over 3 million its opening weekend. Yeah, I didn't think this one was going to do extremely well. I just don't think the market's there. I mean, from the trailers and stuff, it definitely looked like a good one and one to see, but I just didn't think the interest was there, really. And we kind of saw this in September with Stronger, which is still just not doing very well at the box office. It's only up to 4 million now after this weekend. Platform release is not really working for some of these movies. Now, obviously, we have stuff like Victoria and Abdul, which is in the top 10 again this weekend. And of course, we're going to get to it in a minute here, but the Florida Project, we're seeing the platform releases do work, but not always. So this is an example of one that's probably not going to work unless it does much, much better here in the next couple weeks. Supposedly keeps expanding. Okay, now we've got, ooh boy, this one is, kind of hurts. It's Annapurna's Professor Marston and the Wonder Woman. Of course, it's kind of the story of how Wonder Woman was created and kind of the first iterations of it and everything. Opened in 1,229 theaters for a domestic haul of $737,000. Oof. Per theater average is only up to $600 on this one. This one kind of last second got into that wide release platform there, and I think it was the wrong choice. This one actually, I think if you do it as a platform release, I think it would have actually been way more beneficial than just throwing it out wide, but I don't know. And another thing we have to remember too, this one, again, I didn't see a lot of marketing for it outside of online ads and YouTube videos and stuff. You're also looking at a pretty exclusive audience. Sure, it helps that they had the previews and the posters look like Wonder Woman and kind of reflect on that, since Wonder Woman was the biggest box office hit of the summer, at least domestically. That's probably the best you can do in this case, but I just think this one, it's too bad that it's getting such a low number here. It did look like an interesting film, but again, you're going after a very exclusive audience here, so it's kind of like pick your poison as far as what you're going to do at the box office. Okay, yeah, so we're going to end on this one, on the Florida Project, which expanded into 33 theaters this weekend. $400,000, a little more than that, was the total there for a per theater average of $12,156 in its second weekend. A24, I think, has a very sizable hit here. We're beginning to see on some sites that do kind of gather up the materials for Oscar contenders that the Florida Project, after its nice work here at the box office and also great critical reviews, is starting to jump up. I told you this like a month and a half or 2 months ago that this one was going to be around to stay, and it is. So good on me for recognizing that early. But of course, we never know. It could fall out, in the next couple minutes, but who knows? All right, now we're going to move on to the New Mutants trailer. This came out actually midnight on Friday the 13th. I had already recorded the show for Friday by the time that trailer had come out, so I didn't have time to stick in any thoughts there after it had premiered. Here is what I think about it. I think, the X-Men franchise over at Fox, they're kind of doing each movie a little different. Logan, I think, is in its own continuity, separate from all the other X-Men movies in the same way that Deadpool is. And there's a couple of the television series which supposedly aren't really going to link up, or, if they are, then it's going to be way down the line. So Fox is kind of doing a little bit of everything with their X-Men universe, which, you have Marvel, which is doing everything is connected. Every last television, every last movie, every last thing is connected, with the exception of, like, the recurring comic books. And even in that universe, the TV series not exactly lines up with every last movie detail. It's not like we're expecting Daredevil and the other Defenders to join up in Infinity War. And then at the same time, you have DC, which has their movie universe, which is kind of tanking right now. We'll see what happens after Justice League. But they have their TV universe, where they have a couple of different things, like Gotham is its own separate thing, and then you have the Arrowverse, which includes sometimes, I guess, I'm not a big expert on this, you have the Flash, Supergirl, Black Bolt, whatever else is coming out, and that is going strong, and the fan base for that is big, and the fan base is very happy with those shows. So you have those kind of things. Marvel and DC are two separate things, and now also Marvel over at Fox is kind of setting up its own thing, to where you have some stuff that's connected, some stuff that's totally different, other stuff that is in its own universe as well. So there's not really a big connective tissue here. So, with the New Mutants, it's a chance to really break out and do something different in the film universe, which pretty much the last two movies, with the exception of Apocalypse, they've already done, with Deadpool kind of being a romantic comedy that happens to be a superhero movie. Then you had Logan, which kind of happened to be a Western as a superhero movie as well. Now this one, New Mutants, is, without a doubt, a horror movie that is also a superhero movie. Now, of course, we have films like Chronicle, which I've not seen, which is kind of a found footage horror movie that happens to be about superheroes. So it's not like this is breaking new ground, but not really on this budget, because Chronicle was on a very low budget. Supposedly, this budget's probably going to be higher than that. And you've also got some recognizable stars, so it's definitely not going to be in that found footage style, thank God. But we do have the opportunity, again, to create something really cool. And I think this first trailer represented that very well. Of course, it's just a teaser trailer, so we don't know the full story. We haven't really been introduced to the characters very well, but you can only expect so much from a teaser trailer. And I think they did a good job of establishing what the tone is. This is going to be a pure horror movie that just happens to be an X-Men movie as well, or set roughly in the same universe. So yeah, again, I am not in any way an aficionado when it comes to these characters or the universe or the comics and all the backstories, so I can't tell you what any of the characters' names are unless I Wikipedia it. I don't know anything else about it, but the only thing I do know is Josh Boone is the director here. He also did The Fault in Our Stars. This guy looks like he could go 2 for 2 for these recent films. Because I know Fault in Our Stars, I had problems with it, but I found it to be one of the more enjoyable of these young adult book adaptations. Now this one looks like it's going to get a lot right. He's got kind of a similar kind of young cast, and he has some pretty spooky images and pretty terrifying kind of jump scares in there that are definitely, again, outside of that box of the superhero movie and creating something different. And I think, again, it could be something kind of cool to see. And yeah, I think as long as Fox keeps doing this, they're going to keep holding on to the rights for all these characters. Now, I know there's that underground movement of everything should be at Marvel and everything DC related should be together, but this is a good antithesis to that idea. Because if you put everything under Marvel and you have one guy, in this case Kevin Feige, kind of controlling everything, if there's an idea that he doesn't gel with, it's on the shelf and it's going to be there for a long, long time. After he's gone is the only time you can get to it. The same thing if DC, we've got supposedly a standalone Joker movie, kind of origin story, whatever it is. And then we have all these ideas for a Harley Quinn Joker movie, and then you have the standalone Batman, which could be, couldn't be, out of the continuity of the rest of the films. You got all the TV stuff. If one person or one big company or whatever, or one board of executives, whatever, is controlling everything, if there's an idea or a project that really is great and has a great script and has a great star, producer attached and all that, but it doesn't fit into this universe idea, then it goes away and nobody ever talks about it. It's never brought up again until the cinematic universe thing fails. And by that point, executives and everybody at the studio's like, well, the last thing we did with this failed, so why do we want to try it again so soon? Then it collects more dust, and then it becomes irrelevant, and then you have to update it, and then you kind of morph into something else. That's been known to happen to some other projects. So that's kind of the pro that somebody like Fox has is, hey, if you have this idea, we don't really have the shared cinematic universe. We can go ahead and do it, and it's not going to be a problem, and I think that's an excellent way to do filmmaking. It doesn't restrict your filmmakers, doesn't restrict your script writers at all. They can do whatever ideas they want to do. And I think New Mutants, as long as it pans out and it turns into at least a good film, I think that's going to continue over at Fox, and I definitely think it's something that Marvel and DC should consider. Okay, so that's all I got to say about that, really. It's a good trailer. Nice little preview for it, and I'm sure we'll get more as we get closer to its release date in April. Alright, so let's talk about this. Only the Brave. Its movie comes out this Friday, and a local theater around me had an advanced screening. It was one I had to pay for. It wasn't a free screening, I'll just let you know. And I don't know if this theater does this continually, or this is the first time they've tried it. Either way, it's a first for me. I've never seen a movie this early, and I'll tell you what. And I'm not saying this, and I don't think the experience of seeing it early had anything to do with my opinion on the movie, but this is one that I think we're going to see quickly turn into a dark horse Best Picture contender. Now, I might be stepping out on a limb here, I might be totally alone on this boat, but this movie is phenomenal. Now, I've seen a lot of the reviews are saying it's okay. I don't know what's wrong with those people. This movie was great. Now, all the ads and all the posters and stuff make it look like a very stereotypical kind of procedural movie. Kind of like, hey, we're going to show you for 2 hours what these kind of wildlife firefighters do. That's kind of the basis of who the characters are. You've got a really talented cast here, including Josh Brolin, who leads the whole thing. Then you got Miles Teller, Jeff Bridges, James Badge Dale, who's great in the movie, Taylor Kitsch, Jennifer Connelly, who steals this whole movie. She plays Josh Brolin's wife, and she is terrific. Seriously, I can't remember the last time Jennifer Connelly was this good. And I definitely think that she's going to break out and get one of those slots for supporting actress, at least by our early estimates here. And I'm even saying it could get in for Best Picture. You know, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Hell or High Water from last year, not just because Jeff Bridges is in it, but because it's kind of that man's movie, or what some Oscar people call a steak eater's movie. It's kind of like those people who are in the lower categories, kind of like the film editing and sound categories, visual effects and all that. Some of their movie tastes aren't always for those big dramas or the big period pieces and costume pieces, and they're not for the sci-fi. They're more for like the action movies or the grittier movies, kind of like Hell or High Water was a Western. So I think there will be cross appeal between the crowds of Hell or High Water and this movie, Only the Brave. And plus, it's also a real-life story. You've got real-life characters in there, so that always helps. That's always a good starting point. And it's also got some nice work, technically speaking. I think the film editing, there's a nice little sequence in the beginning, which is a little montage of Josh Brolin getting ready for his day. Even that start, I'm like, okay, so it's got some nice editing here. Cinematography, I can't remember the cinematographer's name. I think it's Claudio Miranda or something like that. Terrifically well-shot movie. Some of the special effects involving the fires look really good. It'll probably get one of those nods. I mentioned Jennifer Connelly. She's probably a good bet to get into the supporting actress race, because that's the only category right now that looks like it's kind of lacking competition. Best Actor is getting competitive. Best Actress is already very, very competitive. And also Best Supporting Actor, it looks like some of those slots are starting to fill up. But Best Supporting Actress, there's kind of a few definites, like at this rate, Holly Hunter, Laurie Metcalf, and Allison Janney. But it looks like a couple other slots there are kind of looking a little open. So I think Jennifer Connelly will definitely fill one of those as long as the movie catches steam and the voters see it. And I'll tell you what, this movie, again, it does have those procedural elements. So there's a couple of parts where you're like, oh, okay, this is the part where Josh Brolin gives the big speech to all the trainees. This is the part where they deal with this. This is the part where they deal with that. This is the part where this guy almost dies. And yeah, there are elements like that. But the characters and the way that the characters are treated, the way they're written, the way that they feel like real life characters, and they are, really overcomes all of those. And plus, you know, once it gets to that third act, there's a couple of predictable elements where, you know, it starts out this way so you know something's going to happen. But again, there's kind of this gut punch ending to the movie, which I don't want to spoil at all, but it definitely left an emotional impact on the audience I was with. And I was almost with them. It was a very, very emotional movie by the end. And really, it was just our involvement and our dedication to the characters that really help it. In a world today where all the superhero movies kind of dominate with the box office, and even critically speaking, a lot of superhero movies are considered some of the best films of the year. This is a movie that really shows what the real life superheroes do in their kind of day-to-day activities and how they're the ones that we really need to respect. And not saying that, you know, fictional characters like Captain America, like Batman, and so on and so forth, not to say that they don't deserve their place as far as high criticism or low criticism, depending on their films, but it's definitely a film that says, hey, this is actually what it's all about. People who save other people's lives, and you can actually go and talk to them. They're not just on the page or on the screen. And I think, of course, you know, movies that do that sometimes do reach a little bit sentimentally speaking, and they kind of overdo it. But this is one I didn't think overdid it, and it got all of its genuine emotional moments. I mean, they were very much earned. And again, a lot of the performances, Josh Brolin is terrific. Miles Teller gives a very nice performance, very well-rounded character who has a nice arc through the movie. Jeff Bridges, he's kind of brief in the movie. He's very much a supporting character. He only shows up for maybe a grand total of 15 minutes in the movie, but he's good. You've got Joseph Kosinski as the director here, whose work before has never really impressed me. This left a very big impression on me, and definitely the script, also very well written. I think maybe the adapted screenplay category is another one this year, where we've got a few solid contenders, but we've got some open space, and we're kind of waiting for a film to break in. I think this is the film that's going to break into that best adapted screenplay category. Now, again, I'm kind of saying this just off of the high of just having seen the movie, and I got to see it early, so maybe that had something to do with it. But again, I don't think so. I think this is one that when it comes out, people are going to really love. I think especially if you go to like Rotten Tomatoes and you see, actually the score right now is 100% from the critics, but I think when the audience reviews come in, it's going to be like 90-95%. It's a very much a crowd-pleasing movie, but it also has a lot more going on beneath the surface. And I definitely think it's one that you should go see this Friday. All right, and just to let you know, this isn't, yeah, again, my typical review, but 10 out of 10 for this one. It is one of the 3 best films I've seen this year. All right, so I guess that's enough for today's show. We'll be back again on Friday. We'll see what happens this week in movie news. And this has been the Plagman Rules Podcast.